Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for listening, whether it be on my podcast or on YouTube. I'm truly grateful. This is a story, myth, I guess, folklore, still Shropshire, and it's called Madam Pigott. Interesting name. When asked about Madam Pigott to anybody, you'll find there are many stories. You'll hear them tell, there's an empty house. People say she haunts it. Nobody likes to go there after dark. No, it's the house. The one that's further down the road with the broken window. My brother dared his mate. Yep, dared his mate to go and tap on that window. And he did. And the door opened. They ran away. Another one would say, if you look in a mirror and say Madam Pigott 3 times, she'll appear behind you in the mirror, but she'll kill you before you can turn around. Most children and adults have heard of Madam Pigott. They didn't know why she haunted the town, but they all knew different places she said to walk, and all of them shared that slight tingle of fear, the prickling down the spine, the excitement and danger of the story that would return to haunt them when they next found themselves alone in the dark. At lunchtime, we'd been talking about Madam Pigott and it had moved to the staff room from the class. But at first, teachers laughed at some of the outrageous details given by the children. But then they too began to swap tales. They had heard of Madam Pigott, how the lane along Cheney Hill is still haunted by her, and everyone knows it's an accident black spot. That the cellar of Delhi Wycherley's is said to be haunted by Madam Pigott, and the staff only ever go down in pairs. One teacher in particular remembered coming to an area, young and newly qualified. He was sent with a minibus along the old Chetwynd Road to pick up some children from an outing. He thought the other teachers' laughter was because he had drawn the short straw for staying after school. It was only tea time, but it was winter and a dark, wet night. He felt more and more uneasy as he drove along the old road, his wipers battling the brown, wet leaves, blowing onto the windscreen. He turned the radio on, trying to dispel his disquiet, but the signal crackled and vanished. A prickling ran up and down his spine, and his eye caught something in the rear-view mirror. It was gone too fast to be certain, but for a moment he was sure he'd seen a face staring back at him. He was still shaky when he reached his destination, but he smiled at the children and the other teachers and said nothing at the time. All the same, he took the longer route back into Newport. Only when back at school the next day did he get interrogated by the other teachers, wondering if he'd seen anything strange. He was lucky. It is a night that accidents happen, always when a young man is driving alone. He feels the presence of someone behind him, sees a pale face in the mirror, feels someone else's hands on his own, and twisting the wheel from his grip, skidding the car off the road. People say that it all started with Squire Pigott. He was not the type to enjoy being a country squire and spent most of his time in London. But the squire was no longer a young blade, and he knew that he needed to look to his estate. He needed a wife, a well-bred girl to manage Chetwynd Hall, and to bear him a son for an heir. He courted a young woman of good breeding, and soon the wedding bells rang out. As far as the squire was concerned, the marriage was a business arrangement. For many young women, it would have been perfect independence, managing her own budget and estate. No husband underfoot to rule over her decisions. for the squire was far more interested in his life in London than living out the backwaters of Shropshire. Sadly, his new bride made a fatal mistake. She fell in love. She waited for her wedding day with sighs and longing. She shared girlish laughter with her friends at whispers of what to expect when she was married. She dreamed of romance, being adored, being shown off to the London crowd. She was to be disappointed. In the beginning, the squire came home fairly regularly from his business appointments, but once his wife was pregnant and his duty done, he was home less and less, finding his entertainment elsewhere. His young bride was left alone in the great house to be Madam Pigott, learning to manage the daily running of his estate, and of course dealing with the servants, who knew the estate far better than she did. For the first weeks she mooned over his portrait, eagerly waited for his return. But his visits grew further and further apart, and on the rare occasion he was there, he showed more interest in his drinking companions than in her. The young Madam Pigott pined. Her hopes and dreams withered away. She dealt with her day-to-day reality. Her loneliness and depression was not helped by a growing sickness as the baby inside her grew. It seemed there was little to her life but duty. Her health grew worse as her belly thickened, and by the time the baby was due she was frail and weak. With the birth of his heir imminent, Squire Pigott returned home, waiting for the baby to make its arrival. At last the pain started, and the midwife was sent for. When the midwife arrived and saw how weak the mother was, she immediately asked for a doctor. The hours ticked by. Madam Pigott was running out of strength and time. Squire Pigott paced up and down outside the chamber, waiting the arrival of his son. Eventually the door opened and the doctor emerged from the room. He wiped his hands with a towel, looked at the squire and shook his head. Madam Pigott, in a hazy cloud of pain, holding tight to the midwife's hand, heard the doctor's voice through the wall. "I'm sorry. I've done my best, but time is short. There is a chance I might save one or the other, but I cannot save them both." "One must lop the root to save the branch," was the squire's reply. Madam Pigott heard her husband's clipped tones as he spoke the words. He did not ask to see her. The door to the birthing chamber opened again. She gave a sob and tried to push herself away as the doctor came towards her. Then there was silence. Neither mother nor child survived. The next night, Squire Pigott was awoken by the sound of sobbing and a baby crying. He sat up in bed looking around. Abruptly the noise stopped. He went back to sleep. But twice more he was woken by the crying. The third time he got out of bed and was drawn to the window. On the moonlit lawn was the form of his wife clutching her baby close. Each night the Squire Pigott spent in the house, he was woken by sobbing and crying, until at last it was constantly in his ears. He would wake in the night, sheets wrapped tightly around him as though he was swaddled as a baby. Each night the sheets grew tighter, until he barely managed to free himself and fell choking and fighting to the floor. Squire Pigott left. He went to London and finally moved abroad. Chetwynd Hall was sold, but Madam Pigott stayed. Each night at midnight, a wisp of white mist funneled through the skylight in the roof of the old rectory and descended on the breeze until it came to rest on the lawn at the front of the house. The mist coalesced into a sobbing woman, clutching a swaddled infant. The spirit walked through the grounds of the house and along the dark, high-banked lane that went up Cheney Hall and Cheney Hill. Madam Pigott would sit near the top of the hill, rocking back and forth on the twisted roots of an old tree, combing her hair over her ghostly baby in the moonlight. If a rider went past or came past, especially a man, racing for the midwife, Madam Pigott would jump up in the saddle behind him and clasp his hands around his waist. She would try to pull the terrified rider down, clinging and clawing no matter how the rider tried to shake her off. Only when the horse had crossed running water would she let the terrified man speed on into the dark, leaving her behind. At last, 12 churchmen assembled to lay the ghost to rest by reading psalms. The clergymen stood in a circle in the church. The open door. They prayed and the church grew dark. A breeze fluttered the pages. Madam Pigott had arrived. The clergy did not falter, relentlessly chanting the words of prayer. But Madam Pigott's spirit was strong and would not be calmed. The sweat beaded on their foreheads while Madam began to laugh, and the laugh echoed all around the church, mocking them. The wind grew stronger, blowing their hair and ripping the pages from their hands as they tried to read. Exhausted by the effort of such intense prayer, one by one the voices of the clergymen petered into silence. One low voice continued, "Mr. Foy." The curate of Edgemond intoned the words from memory when the pages were torn from his grip. Strong and firm, line by line, his voice rang out, filling the church, though his hands began to shake and his skin growing pale and clammy with the effort. Gradually, he was mastering the spirit. Slowly, the ghost's powers diminished. No longer whirling round the roof of the church, but drawn down to the centre of the circle of priests, she shrank smaller and smaller, until there was just a glowing ball of mist, size of a mouse, which Mr. Foy scooped up into a waiting bottle. The spirit was trapped. With his mission accomplished, Mr. Foy collapsed, and the remaining clergy, recovering from their thrall, gathered around him to tend him. After about a week's bed rest, Mr. Foy was up and about again, but he had paid the price and never again recovered the strength he had possessed previously. But Madam Pigott had been subdued, and the bottle was thrown into Chetwynd Pool. The townspeople had an interlude of peace with the ghost trap beneath the water. Mr. Foy grew old and eventually died, aged 61. That winter the land was in the grip of a harsh winter. Some children were out skating on Chetwynd Pool, and a girl broke the ice with her skate, the blade of the skate cracking the bottle floating just beneath. Once freed, Madam Pigott was more active than she had ever been. She jumped onto passing wagons and clung onto carriages. Even in daylight, horses would snort and blow, rolling their eyes in fear if they were forced down Cheney Lane. The light of her presence was seen each night atop of Cheney Hill, and few were brave enough to venture out after dark. Once again, the required 12 men of God assembled. They arranged themselves in a circle, a candle in front of each and an open bottle in the centre. They began to read prayers and the spirit flew about in a wild frenzy, snuffing out all the candles at once. The eldest priest stood firm and urged his colleagues to continue. Wide-eyed and terrified, they continued to pray, knowing that their circle opened the doors between worlds. If they were cast into darkness with all the candles snuffed, then the door would be open for the devil himself to come through and claim them. One by one, with shaking hands, they relit their candles and found the strength of will. The strength of will to keep them going, keep that flame burning, make sure they did not stop. Their voices grew stronger. The wild spirit was at last drawn in between the candles. As the 12 voices combined in the Lord's Prayer, The spirit shrank and was pulled down into the mouth of the bottle. The eldest priest leaped forward and quickly corked the bottle. That should have been the end of it. No one knows quite what happened to the bottle. Some say it was thrown into the Red Sea. Others say maybe it was buried deep in Newport. In fact, not just Newport, but Newport Cemetery. But maybe it has been broken again. It seems the spirit refuses to be trapped. For to this day, stories abound about her, and new ones are constantly being told. And as the years go by, she still holds tight to the bitterness and thirst for vengeance of a woman spurned and betrayed. No matter how much bravado they may show, there are few Newport lads who would dare to go up Madam Pigott's hill after dark. The end. Well, a woman scorned and all that. Poor lady, do feel for her. Can't be nice. Thank you for listening. I truly appreciate it. If you're on the podcast, consider coming over to YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, please hit the like. It's completely free. Share if you can. And if you've not yet subscribed, please do so. It does really help. Many blessings.